First of all, Dmitry, Olga, Nikolai, Caleb, Mia, I'm really glad that I can have this conversation in person, that you made it to Vienna, and that you made these really beautiful installations that look great in the exhibition. Both Zapantera Negra and the Chto Delat installation are really, for me, highlights of the exhibition. And I'm really happy because I've been an admirer of both of your practices for a really long time, that we can, and of your collectives, that we can have this conversation today. And I would like to start about the social movements and the urgency. So there are, I will just give a bit of the pointers to the topics that would be great that maybe we talk about today. And the first one would be if you could maybe say something about your relationship of your art practices to the wider social and political movements that is very important for you. And also, both of you in your work, you write about the urgency and about the need to connect to to the urgencies of the current political moment. And maybe you can say a few words about that as well.
Geez, well, yeah, that's a question that could be answered in so many different areas. We could answer it as individual object makers. We could answer it as people who exist within our bodies in the world, how we engage with architecture, public space. And we could answer it as people who have experienced displacement, forced migration, the real political outcomes in society. What lens are we looking at it through? And so me and I met in grad school in the Chicago Art Institute, and we had a very specific practice of making objects, right? Even using our bodies. After a while, Mia can talk about our experience together and how we started to understand art more through our bodies and through public space. And that led us to try to investigate what different social movements meant outside the context of institutional structures, the art world, philosophy, whatever, right? We wanted to see what was being manifested outside of these paradigms, right? And so we started to work and learn, mostly learn from the Zapatista movement, that are the masters of storytelling through their bodies, through performance, through the Mayan language. And it was just a whole opening of understanding the creative process through a collective lens that really kind of shattered our Western educational process, And so this is, for us, has been just a journey of learning and of sharing what we've learned at this point. If you want to say something.
Yeah, I think that was nicely said. We're also grateful to be here with you guys, of course. It's an honor to be inspired from you guys and to be in conversation through the art and see how we perceive and have worked with different movements and how other artists and thinkers, how you guys have been able to perceive and work with these different movements. I can, I guess, talk more personally from my experience. I'm better at talking that way. So yeah, like Caleb said, I think that to me, when we were in grad school together, I was able-bodied person and something happened. I, had a near-death experience and kind of survived and rehabilitated my body in the hospital. But my mind, my soul was still in need of, connection, recuperation. And so I was lucky enough to be in a space of grad school where I could just dive into art making, and in that time I really entered into a space of like psychomagic making, so taking different actions in public and in private that I had never done before, that seemed like it was like an irking of my soul, like telling me to do different things in order to connect to the land or to the spirit or to death or to life or to answer different questions in society. You know, all of a sudden I was a spectacle or I was invisible at the same time. So I was going through all these different personal things, and I was also seeing how they were related to the wider public. So, you know, fellow, you know, differently abled people would come up to me, and we had a shared experience. So fast forward, we went to Chiapas. You know, we had the honor to come close to Zapatista artists and revolutionaries, and also just amazing people who are already doing work within the movement. And it just really deepened this like soul search and the way that art could really kind of bring us into a place that was more connected.
Yeah, the question of social movements is like super crucial for us. That's why one of our initiatives, the Rosa House of Culture, is so central to our practice in a way, because there is a little hub for various politically engaged groups to come and to be there, to have their headquarters, to have the space shared, and to exchange their ideas, to prepare their rallies, to do like real political stuff. And we are co-engaged, of course, with those smaller, bigger circles of political activists. This is like super important and crucial for us as for artists, with a certain sensitivity, with a certain kind of ideology, we can also say, right? So there are young Marxists reading group or social engaged movements that are just really sharing that space with us, and it is important to bring together the knowledge, the art, and the political activities as such. And importantly for us, that in St. Petersburg right now we can say it's a huge revival of feminist movements that are coming from different perspectives and that are getting engaged with the politics. Because in Russia, as you may know, right now this is a critical point of political disability. After 20 years of Putinism, we are having this very, very brutal, muted situation that you can hardly move, that the only oppositional kind of leader or porte-parole of the counter-Putin movement, Alexei Navalny, is right now in prison and in hospital, and his movement is dismantled basically. So how can we still get engaged with real politics? How even on the like very grassroots level, on a very kind of basic movement, just to engage with each other and to be in solidarity with. So that's it's not directly connected to our art practice, but hugely influences us. And that's how it always was for us since 2003.
Yeah.
You'd like?
Yes.
Please.
Why not?
No.
Yeah, and this is why Zapatismo is so important for us, because we really don't know. Sometimes we really don't know how to continue our artistical and political activity, you know. And it looks like Zapatismo can help, can bring us some hope, you know, that we can find the way how to manage.
But I can add, actually, you know, for us, actually, if we start from the beginning, because Zapatismo, which came to us through the books, documentaries, was really crucial because it was late 90s, beginning of 2000. It was really offer us incredible new sensibility of that kind of connection between poetic and political language. That's what you said about narratives and so on. And then it was really, I don't know, because people have very short memory, because actually we participated in now kind of forgotten movements of the movements, social forums. So 2002, it was Genoa, we haven't been there, but 2003 in Paris, European Social Forum, then Russian Social Forum starts, and actually we somehow felt that opportunity there to bring very important issues of cultural politics, labor in culture, and many other things that actually bring us actually in a very close connection with other people. So we made few kind of semi-documentary work reflecting this period. So it was really very, very important. But as Nikolai mentioned, right now the situation is super desperate, and right now it's really very actually developing and still developing in a very repressive dynamic. And right now it challenges us with many other issues, maybe like dissidency, how to create certain kind of confidential spaces, and maybe still protect autonomy, which also somehow ideas which we share with Zapatista, how in that alien world to create some inhabitable spaces where you can breathe, where you can move, and you can embrace your comrades and keep light going on, you know. And yeah, that's why I guess that, because actually, I don't know if I'm jumping to another question, but at the same time, our work is not about Zapatistas in Mexico. It's about how we were inspired by Zapatista ideas, haven't been there, have just read some books and feel that kind of conventional form of, interpellation, because and we were lucky, we are very good friends with translator of Subcomandante Marcos and all declaration into Russian, and actually he helped us a lot to navigate when we visited Chiapas and Subcomandante Moises and many other people, so it was really, really very crucial period for us through that. But at the same time, I guess you work more with that political dimension of Zapatism, and we, because of our situation, we use more that kind of poetic devices, which when we showed in Sidesia, our film was very interesting, the reaction of Zapatista, because we were really afraid if they read it or not. Maybe it was just like stupid Russians, do some crazy things, but they got it. It was really amazing. So it was not in a letter, but in certain kind of spirit, So I'm sorry, I just took too much.
I think this opens up another, for me, really important topic that is brought by both of your practices, and this is a really strong belief in the power of image, in this transformative image as a kind of a catalyst for solidarity, for raising awareness, for bringing together certain communal energies. Maybe I don't know if you would say maybe a bit about that, about this importance of image, of the power of image in your practice. I mean, obviously going back to images of Black Panthers, and even going to images of also appropriating and reworking images of other practices. Yeah.
I don't know. I think for me, it's it gets stuck in language first. In Celtal, it's Tzotzil, how do you describe a fruit is the eye of a tree in ancient Mayan, Celtal, Chol, Mam. The roof is the head of a house, stuff like that. And so it starts with language. Now we're hearing the right to defend yourself in Israel-Palestine conflict. Language seems to be stronger than image right now in political discourse. It dominates social media. And so the point is, how do we challenge the narrative language through visual culture? How do we bring the visual aspects of our body, of architecture, to kind of shift the narrative of language? And so that was I think I could sit with that question a little bit longer to think about and contemplate it. But regards to what the Black Panthers did and the Zapatistas do in regards to the image, we know that the state, the military state, uses image, uses the body, performs public space to assert a certain power of the state. And the Zapatistas, you know, they show up with wooden guns carved with the illusion of the absurdity to take on the U.S. imperial powers, to break the contracts between NAFTA and Canada that had mining contracts in their territory. And they really knew the power of image and poetry to take on these powers, right? And so the Black Panthers also understood, without the context of art, forget the whole institutional critique of all that stuff. They understood the use of the body. Emory Douglas understood how the portrayal of the black body in a violent, aggressive form would frighten the establishment, the white establishment, and reintroduce Emory Douglas kind of reintroduced the way that the male black figure was perceived in the United States by the mass dominant culture, white culture. And they understood that by presenting it as a kind of a rather violent, self-determined black figure was going to shake the establishment. On the other hand, it was going to give another mirror effect because the newspaper was mass-produced in cities and they could hang it in the rooms. It was an image that was heavily distributed of the black figure, a completely new thing happening in the United States. And so yeah, the power of the image, and we're trying to, you know, just kind of share these two movements, use of the image, use of the body, use of public space to ignite the imagination for you know, the possibilities for radical transformation.
We strongly believe in power of art.
Power of images,
Power of
yeah, because,
image.
you know, actually what really interested and intrigued me, because, you know, being an artist in an art world, especially in Western art world, you're completely obsessed by criticality. So everything in critique and self-critique. And actually what really annoying that mostly in contemporary art, people really disbelieve. So they really, you know, after a few waves of conceptualism and postmodernism, no one believes in the power of the image and the power of the art. But when you talk to normal people who are not from art world, they incredibly trust. So they need a song,
Right.
they need image, they need poster, they need slogan, you know, they need poetry. And it's incredible trust into art. And then certain kind of self-annihilation on that part of artists. Well, oh my God,
Right.
that's, yeah, we should
Right.
escape any kind
Painting
of...
is dead.
Yeah, you know, that for me was also quite very important message. So how we can resolve that burden, because we are not pretend, we are not indigenous people, so we have all that kind of burden of Western
Right.
art language and that kind of destruction and avant-garde and so on, how we can reclaim this particular power and make it in certain way useful. Also through, because you mentioned very important about pedagogy, because Zapatism also very much about pedagogy, and maybe Olga, she actually deal with this topic quite seriously, and you wrote article, very important, make films Zapatistically. Not make film about Zapatism, not about that, but make it in another form of protocol of creating new language. And not only language, but also the process which bring you into completely another form of aesthetic, how to say, shape or form.
Yeah, thank you for your question, because I really started to think what is the role of the image in our Zapatistas pieces of art, because we already made 3 projects. And,
Too unsure.
yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, and thank you that you said language. Yes, language is much more important now. Yeah, of course, image. I always thinking about image, and I like images. I like that when image is really strong, you know, I feel I really like it. But in our Zapatista projects, we escape these strong images, but we so.
Ну, подумай. Ну, подумай, что там про слабость еще начали.
Да.
Как-то диалектику такую. Нам не догоняться.
Yeah, but during our projects, our task was to create our own language because Dima told already that we started with reading. We're reading the book by Subcommandant Marcus, Another Revolution, and with our young comrades. It was kind of pedagogical project. And from the beginning, it was just nothing. It was like fairy tales. It was like full of poetry, full of metaphoric things and such. But then we started. We went deeper and deeper.
We should make a sign. No entry.
No trespassing.
No trespassing, exactly.
And we found a lot of things which was really important for us and for our young comrades, you know. And it was our own, you know. And then we spent 2 weeks together. And during that 2 weeks, we really created our own language. We found words which are important. And we created our practice around that words.
That's why the little puppet theater appears there,
Yeah,
right? So like it is a combination of performativity based on the pedagogy of the parabola, how do you call it? Fable.
Fable.
And then the image. So all come together and in a very kind of interweaved ways. So for us, it was also a learning process to build the imagery based on the poetry and based on the real politics. That's how it reflects and bounces back to us. How Zapatismo that started in 1994 and even before that, how it bounces back and reflects on our reality, political reality, and how the poetics can be not extracted, but reaffirmed and reestablished and rewritten by ourselves. Yeah.
And may I add something? Yeah. And one of the most important things which we found is, found in Zapatistas' ideas, that weakness can be stronger than power. And you know that knowledge, I'm not sure that it goes from Zapatistas, or maybe it was created during our reading, but now this knowledge supports us nowadays, in our life now. Because we are.
I would just say one thing very quickly. You guys have also brought up theater, right?
Yeah.
And I think that what we're really talking about is constructing reality. And what is reality, right? Is it the chicken or the egg first, right? Is it an image that we can see together? Is it even more powerful when we can see it collectively? Is it more powerful when I can bring it from my mind to physicality? If I act it out in a theater, is that reality? Like a lot of the politics that you see today is just a huge theater, and it convinces people of something that is true, right? So where do we find truth in our language, in our theater, in our images? I think these are all questions that Zapatistas play with, and that we all play with in our work.
Yeah.
Another question, both of your collectives very much kind of work, of course, within the exhibition context, but also outside of it, through publishing, through schools, through different pedagogical projects. Can you maybe say a bit about kind of how are all these different methodologies and approaches interrelated, and how do they feed into each other? And why all these different things?
You know, actually, I can start. For us, that educational value of any artistic practice, for example, you know, surplus, is actually about education, because education, it's pretty romantic idea from Schiller time on. I permanently repeat the possibility of art to transform human mind, sensibility, and everything. But in a real educational process, when you teach people not just art in the traditional studio practice way, but art in relation to quite hot issues around them in society, inside their bodies, and also because of our age situation, it also very, also kind of traditional, but at the same time in between generation exchange, which we found quite important and also interesting for both sides. Because when young people teach young people, it's fine, absolutely great. But at the same time, that age gap or difference create certain kind of attention, because sometimes we are really lost in front of that young audience. Maybe you know it from your school in Zagreb, you know, or otherwise, you know. Yeah, that's really,
It's a
that's
different language, right?
somehow, you know, how we continue that tradition of Futemas, Black Mountain College, and many other kind of initiative where artists was really kind of trying to negotiate their positions and actually move forward together. But at the same time, it also right now it's about ecology, so how we create certain kind of cultural environmentalism to defend certain values. Some ideas which not yet born, you know, and this is, I really think, what we should do, and actually it's our political and also human responsibility in front of new generations, so to say.
It was nicely said.
So the question was a little bit about how the work exists inside art
Yes,
spaces as opposed to where it's.
So all the different methodologies and strategies that are not necessarily only exhibition practice, but really also community practice, publishing, education, why and how do they interrelate to each other?
You're good at this one. We were just talking about this on the way
I
here.
know we were talking about why show it at. Yeah, I mean, for a long time, the institutional structures held the validation for anything of value. We hope that it's not a theme or the flavor of the times where things are opening up to more anti-colonial, you know, thinking, or that truly institutions are really doing the deep. That it's not a little guilt trip to bring in these things into the conversation, because this work exists with or without institutional validation. It's powerful. It's beautiful. Um, it's a celebration of survival, of cultural, you know. So there's really, what is that's a great question. What is the need to show this kind of work? We went to the Zapatista communities and we said we wanted to bring some of the artists to Canada to show the work, and they're like, no, it's not our time to move. But go ahead and show the work that we've made collectively, and they gave us, you know, the thumbs up to show it in institutions and museums. So with their permission, you know, we understood that they want to go ahead and share the images with institutions in larger, you know, not to be validated, but to share.
To
right?
propagate in a way.
Yeah. But it's a very complex, I think for me, it's a very complex issue of where institutions hold that level of validation for cultural production and the hierarchies of cultural production. You know, that's been kind of like a theme lately. Yeah. It's for a larger discussion, I think.
I have just one more question for the end that WHW always gets asked, and this is why work together. First of all, what does collective bring to you? Why collective? No.
It's our favorite question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but we have to have it now for a conversation of this group, I think.
I don't know. That's a good question for you to answer since you
Sure. I mean,
curated for with your three.
there's four of us that's been working together for more than 20 years, and for us, it's definitely. I mean, the collectives. It's more than a sum of its parts. I mean, there's a certain solidarity and extra value. And extra value, it's maybe a wrong word because it immediately puts some kind of a, validation. But there is a certain energy and surplus and knowledge that gets created by communicating together. And there is also certain pride on our part in lasting so long, no? Despite all the...
Yeah.
I mean... I think simply through... And there is also, I think, a very symbolic also propagation of idea of collectivity, which we are very much vested into. For us, for sure. It is important for us that we are collective. I mean, maybe you can also add.
I think for me, I really learned about, I grew up in like middle class, my family's like Caucasian, like America, and it was always very much about being independent and succeeding. And over my life, I've learned that you really can't go far when that is your idea of what success is, and that you really need other people. You need a community in order to dream high and achieve those dreams. So for me, it's survival. Even we need to be able to dream. We need to be able to breathe. We need to be able to build homes and raise children and make food to eat. I mean, you can't do any of that by yourself. So why make art by yourself? Like locked in a studio, making your own little thing and then burning it so no one can see it. I mean.
Could also be as a practice.
Yeah, I do that too. But, I feel like you have to have both.
Yeah.
And interesting that you mentioned building together, because one of our first films that we started to elaborate why we are a collective and how to be together was called Builders, right? And it was actually, this is how we met together with WHW, because collective creativity in Kassel was a great show also to bring the question of collectivity and making art together with others. And there was a fantastic show and million of different examples of different practices and methodologies of being together and making art together. And for us, it still is a crucial question after almost 20 years that we are making art and not only art as a collective. What it makes, what questions do we receive from being together, from being a collective, and how we answer those questions and how new questions are done, because we are in constant fight with each other. That's how we make peace.
Right.
Through fighting, through like really analyzing harshly all the issues, methods, images, words, what fit, what doesn't fit, because together it makes more sense for us.
Yeah. And and I guess it is achievement that we didn't kill each other yet, that we are still alive. Yeah, but it looks like we are not collective. Sometimes I'm thinking that we are like family. And this is why we can fight, and because we love each other, it's not only professional activity, not at all, What does it mean, professional activity? I know there are some groups who are like professionals and they're working together because they really want to be strong. Of course we are stronger together. but not because we are good professionals, but because we, sorry to say, we love each other, you know, this is why.
Actually, I briefly followed that recent Turner Prize and the statement of one guy from jury, because as you might don't know, they select only collectives during pandemic, and the guy who was kind of speaking from the board or from jury, he told us that in the year of pandemic, only collective made something relevant in UK, you know. I was quite shocked because actually I was not sure if individual artists in lockdown couldn't produce, but actually that was quite symbolic decision, which also bring, because actually collective is very fragile. Even, I was a few years ago did one interview about collectivity and took your catalog from Castle and start to list groups who survived and who not, and who survived just shortly. And unfortunately, actually, result was very kind of dramatic, so to say. Yeah, it was very, this one. So I don't know, but at the same time, actually it's also about certain, we can't challenge much that kind of individualistic, egoistic art system which actually produced genius who made sometimes incredible works, but at the same time, I guess insisting on working collectively, it's really kind of one of the most important challenges, that to really acclaim that so-called general intellect. You are never alone, like communists never alone. So, but at the same time, refusing kind of your own names, in the name of collective, it's already some micro-political gesture, which in art has its own tradition, but at the same time, it's still kind of valid and a very certain kind of challenge to the system.
Yeah, you mentioned the genius, right? But I think the artist is always stealing to reach that level of authenticity, right? And so the language is created through the collective experience in public space. The artist is just trying to collect the residue of that experience. So our desire to work in collective is to get closer to that authenticity without, going crazy to like really see the authentic experience of what it is to be alive, how to manifest that, how to express that, how to share that. And I think it just happens much more nicer through the collective lens rather than an individual isolated process.
Thank you. I think this is a nice the how to be alive more and how to see things in a more nicer way. It's a nice closure for the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually,
Well done.
we have this. Now I guess.
It's okay. Okay, super.
Okay?
But do you have any glasses?
40 minutes, and then probably you cut a bit. You will cut a bit, and yeah. Super. This is great.
I'm sorry, it was really dangerous. You didn't?
Oh, just in time.